Hey there folks, Tim Slade here, and welcome back to the ATD Ask a Trainer video series. In today's episode, I am answering your questions about making the leap into freelancing full-time. So let's jump into it. The thing about freelancing in our industry and really any sort of creative field is that freelancing full-time is kind of like the ultimate dream for many folks. Not only do you get to set your own schedule and be your own boss, but you get to work on all sorts of different and cool projects and work with different clients every day. And as somebody who freelances full-time, I can attest to the fact that, well, it's fantastic. I absolutely love it. However, making the leap from having a regular full-time job to making it on your own as a successful freelancer, well, it can be a little mysterious, and it can be a little tricky to navigate, and frankly, it can be downright scary. I mean, trust me, it took me almost 10 years, nearly the entire length of my career, before I was even remotely brave enough and felt prepared enough to make the leap. But the good news is that I did it. I made the leap, and I was successful, and now I have tons of experiences and lessons learned that I get to share with you all today. So let's get to your questions about freelancing full-time. All right, so our first question comes from Betty Danowitz. Hey, Betty. And Betty wants to know, how do I know when it's time to quit my full-time job and become a freelancer? Gosh, isn't that like the million-dollar question, right? The truth is that everybody's journey into freelancing is totally unique. And when you'll know when it's time is going to be totally unique to you versus when I knew it was time to make the leap. For me, I knew it was time when what I was doing every day from 9 to 5, when I had a full-time job, I knew it was time when I felt like that thing was a total distraction and a waste of time from what I really wanted to be doing every single day. That's when I knew it was time for me. But the problem with that is it's not very practical, right? So from a practical standpoint, what you need to do is you really need to look at every aspect of your life. And I really mean this, like all of the different aspects of your life. Take inventory of everything and identify what are the things that are standing in your way from feeling ready for making the leap. And you have to either remove those roadblocks or figure out how they fit into your life as a freelancer. Some of those things you're going to be able to address either through time or a lot of hard work. For example, debt. If you have a lot of debt, or maybe you don't have a lot of money in savings, or you don't feel like you've built your brand as strong or well enough, or you need to build a portfolio, you can address those things either through time or a lot of hard work. There's other things like, I don't know, having a family, having kids, whatever the case might be. Those are going to be constants in your life. And so you have to figure out how those pieces fit into your life as a freelancer and how you might need to adjust your expectations or your business so that they work with what it is that you're trying to do. Whatever the case might be, I promise you, you'll know when it's time. You'll feel it in your soul and you'll feel it in your gut. So it's unique to everybody, but look at your life and figure out what's preventing you from feeling ready and then address those first. So I hope that helps, Betty. Thanks for asking. All right, our second question comes from Alexander Salas. Hey, Alexander. And Alexander wants to know, what are some of the fundamental skills needed to be a successful freelancer? Great question, Alexander. The thing about being a freelancer is I think a lot of people put so much thought and effort into being an expert in what it is that they do. And yes, of course, that's a part of it. You need to be really good and confident in whatever it is that you're offering as a freelancer. But beyond that, there's a whole bunch of other skills that go into being a successful freelancer. But first, let me say this. A big part of being a good freelancer is really just about being a really good people person, honestly. You have to have good communication skills and good people skills, right? Because at the end of the day, being a good freelancer, whether it's in e-learning or instructional design, it really isn't all that different from being a good instructional designer or e-learning developer in a regular company. You have to work with stakeholders and plan projects and manage expectations and identify needs and pave a pathway to finding solutions for your stakeholders. All that's the same, right? But there's all these other peripheral things that live on the boundary beyond just being good at what it is that you offer. For example, when you run your own business as a freelancer, you have to know how to market yourself. You have to build your own website. You have to potentially, you might manage a blog. You have to be a good writer. You have to know a little bit about accounting and finances. I mean, all of those skills, these are all things that nobody teaches you, right? These are things that you learn through a lot of trial and error. And I think those are a big part of being a successful freelancer. So it's more than just being good at what you do. It's all of the other things that go into running a good business. So I hope that helps, Alexander, and thanks for asking. All right, so our next question comes from Annalisa Giovannini. I hope I got that right, Annalisa. I apologize if I did not. And Annalisa wants to know, where and how do I find my first clients as a freelancer? Ooh, this is a really good question, because I think there's a huge misconception in our industry about how do you go about finding clients. The truth is I think people need to change their point of view when it comes to finding clients. I don't think a big part of my job is finding clients. A big part of my job is helping clients find me, right? I'm not a salesperson. I would absolutely hate my job as a freelancer if it required me to cold call or send those really annoying LinkedIn messages, pitching potential clients on my services. Like I would hate that. Nobody wants to do that. Luckily, you don't have to do that in order to have clients find you and have a really good base of clients. A big part of, in my opinion, in my experience, a big part of being a successful freelancer means building a really strong, solid brand around yourself, your business, and what it is that you offer. And so the more you put yourself out there into the industry by sharing your expertise, whether it's on LinkedIn or YouTube or writing a blog or even writing a book or creating online courses, whatever the case, whatever it is that you do, the more you put yourself out there, the more that you offer value to the industry, the more that you'll get noticed, and that will come back to you in the form of clients, right? All of the clients that I get are either word of mouth, either from other people who have worked with me, which is great, or from people who see stuff that I share within the industry. That's how I find clients. I don't have to do anything but continue to provide value to the industry, and then it pays it back in the form of work, which is fantastic. So, like I said, start a blog, start sharing your expertise on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube, whatever the case might be. Put yourself out there, and I promise it will pay dividends. So I hope that answers your question, Annalisa, and thank you so much for asking. All right, so our fourth and final question comes from Rita Smith. Hey, Rita. And Rita wants to know, how can I make sure I set myself up for financial success as a freelancer? Great question, and gosh, it's probably the most important question, right? I think about my finances. Gosh, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about my finances, about my business, and about my life. The truth is that you have to have a plan before you make the leap into freelancing. The worst thing you can do is just one day decide, I'm going to quit my job and start freelancing. I can't tell you how scary it is when you do finally quit your job. That feeling of realizing, gosh, in 2 weeks, I'm not going to have a paycheck deposited into my bank account. That's incredibly scary. So, what you do to set yourself up for success from a financial standpoint, of course, is going to be unique to you and your financial situation. For me, I was super conservative about my finances before I made the leap. So conservative that, how I mentioned earlier in the introduction, it took me 10 years before I felt prepared to make that leap. Well, you know what I was doing during all that time, besides building my brand and trying to muster up the confidence? I was trying to save every dime. I was trying to pay off debt. And I ended up saving a year's worth of my expenses. I had to have a year's worth of my expenses in my bank account before I felt comfortable making the leap. Did I need a year's worth of expenses? No. I was incredibly way more conservative than I needed to be. But I will tell you, it made me feel so much more comfortable about making that leap. So you have to look at your financial situation and figure out, what's going to make you feel the most comfortable to make that transition and be successful. Beyond that, my other tip would be is find every possible way you can to diversify your income. I don't rely purely on e-learning development to pay the bills. I have worked really hard to try to diversify my income in as many ways as possible. So for example, in addition to custom e-learning development, I also have found ways to offer my expertise in other services and products. So for example, I also do workshops on e-learning design and development, on how to use Storyline. I wrote a book, self-published a book, that gives a little bit of income. The workshops give a little bit of income. Anything you can do to diversify your income so that you're not just dependent on one source of income will help you be so much more successful. So look at what it is that you're offering, look at your skill set, and start thinking of yourself and what you offer as a product and a service, and find every opportunity you can to capitalize on it. And that will set you up for success. So I hope that helps, Rita, and thank you so much for submitting that question. Okay, I think that's all we have time for today. Those were some fantastic questions, and I hope I was able to alleviate some of the mysterious nature of making the leap into freelancing full time. As always, I want to send a big, huge thanks to everyone who submitted a question for this month's episode. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to get alerted the next time we publish our next episode of Ask a Trainer, click that subscribe button below and make sure to check out the ATD Ask a Trainer advice column by clicking on the link in the description. My name is Tim Slade, and until next time, I'll see you around. Bye!